Hello and welcome to this week's episode of #Leadership What's on Your Mind. Remember, we're a podcast to make you stop and think about your leadership journey and add value by speaking to amazing people with amazing stories and experts in their field. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe on your podcast provider and you hit subscribe on the YouTube channel as well if you're watching us. Nearly got confused then. So today we are speaking to Brian. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, very good to be with you.
Right, so thank you so much for joining me. You're over in America. You're going to tell us a little bit more about why I've got you on. Amazing story. We've got a mutual friend, Ryan Hartley, who's been on the podcast as well. And when I saw what you did and what you were all about, it really fascinated me because of my military background, kind of links into what your way of delivering leadership programs are as well. So for the viewers who don't know you,
sure.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, so good to be with you. I'm Brian Formato, and as Stuart says, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, originally from New York, and I run two companies. One is called Groove Management, and it's a human capital consulting firm, do executive coaching, team building, leadership development programs. And the other is called LeaderSurf, and it's an experiential leadership program. And I believe that there's a leader hidden inside every one of us. And part of it is about unlocking that potential and getting people to believe in themselves so they can get others to believe in them. And that's what leadership really is all about.
Fantastic. So I don't know whether you covered that one already, but we ask every guest about the #leadership, what's on your mind. So what comes to your mind when you think about the word or the title leadership?
Yeah, so leadership, it's the word ship is in it and leader, and I'm a nautical person, and it's really about being able to position the ship in the right way such that others want to get on board, right? And so I think leadership is really about influence. It's not about management. Is very different than leadership, and I think people interchange and use those words synonymously, and that's a big mistake. Management's about control, and leadership is around influence. It's about getting people to see the best in them and bring out the best in them. I jokingly use the term, and I've written about it, the idea that there's no such thing as micro leadership, because you can't, it's not something you put your arms around. It's more a state of mind, and it's about getting people to bring out the best in themselves. And the name of the company, Groove Management, comes from the fact that I believe everyone has a groove, something that makes them better, special, or different. And that's about tapping into your own leadership capability.
Amazing. And I love that. I knew as soon as you said leadership like you did, I thought, I'd never seen that before, the ship thing. And I thought, there's got to be some link there. So staying with you personally, let's see how far back we go on this. So when did your leadership journey start? Was it a light bulb moment, or is it on reflection that you can see how far, where your foundations were built on your leadership journey?
Sure. So I think obviously parents and family have a big influence. And my parents grew me up to believe that, or kind of raised me with this belief that you could be anything you wanted to be, and that it starts with being believing in yourself and having that commitment. My grandfather was a very prominent psychologist, my mother's father, and he worked with several business executives, CEOs, because they were successful in business, but their marriages and their personal lives were a train wreck. And they had been married to their job rather than to their families. And so as he explained to me about that, I looked at it through the lens of, if I want to pursue a career and do something where I help people rather than helping individuals, what if I could help the organizations they're with to set a culture and a tone that has work-life balance, that makes it a place that people want to be, that gives people the time to bring their full selves to work. And so he really was the one that influenced me to look at leadership through a different lens and to get excited about this idea that you can really use it as a tool to help people.
Yeah, amazing. When was your first sort of physical connection, or when did you start to have to bring leadership into your sort of, I know you had a corporate career as well, but where was that first sort of meat and bones of I'm having to become a leader now?
Yeah, so there's this whole philosophy of, to be a leader, do you have to have followers? And I believe you don't. I think actually you need to first believe in and lead yourself and walk the talk, and then hopefully through doing that, others will want to come along for the journey. I had a number of summer jobs like everyone else, and at one point during one summer, myself and a few friends decided that we would start a window cleaning business ourselves. And yeah, this idea of us being kind of in it together, somebody had to emerge. And so I felt like, I was a year older than the other people. And so I kind of emerged as a leader, and we set a philosophy around how we wanted to be, how we wanted to work together, what the values were in terms of, making certain we did a good job for everyone, that we charged a fair price, that we didn't cut corners, et cetera. And so I think that may have probably, been the first time that I had to articulate expectations and start to walk the talk so that others would want to come along for the journey.
Amazing. I love that. And laughing a little bit because my eldest is 10 and he's just started his own car washing business. Cool. with my help and assistance, but not pushing. It's really kind of like he's taken ownership of it. But yeah, really, really exciting. So tell me about how you link leadership with surfing, and how did that come about?
Yeah, so I always believe that you can do your best work when you find that intersection between your passion and your profession. I spent 25 years working in large corporations, couple startups, but mainly big enterprise companies, Time Warner, Ingersoll Rand, Bear Stearns. And as a result of that work, I saw that these companies do a pretty poor job of developing talent within the organizations. And what kind of happened was, if you go back to my childhood, I grew up in New York City. My skateboard was my favorite possession, but during the summers we went to the beach, and I learned to surf as a kid, and it was just, I loved it. And partially because I grew up in the concrete jungle, so it was like the opposite. And I would have loved to become, a beach bum and a surfer. It never happened, but surfing opened doors for me to see the world, to travel, to be one with nature. And so I just, from the time I was about 6 until now 50, I've always loved surfing. And so several years ago, I was asked to help a company come up with a leadership program. And so we ended up getting syllabi from public programs to send people to. What we found was that they really haven't changed in 30 years. You send somebody to a conference center, they sit under fluorescent lights, somebody that wrote a book or that's a professor preaches at them, and hopefully they take some nuggets away. And so I interviewed the people afterwards, and I said, what was the best part of the program? And each of them always came back with the same thing. I said, it wasn't the program, it was the people that I met and the interactions we had socially outside of the program, where we started telling war stories, talking about our challenges at work, and kind of that mastermind group kind of environment. So the thought was, what if I could create a leadership program that was more experiential, that was more about a learning circle, do it somewhere people would want to be at the beach, involve a humanitarian aid piece, because leadership's about serving others. And so to actually physically go and do some work to help people that are in need made sense for it. And I was like, I want to do something physical. People go on a golf outing and do all their things. And I was like, maybe surfing fits with this. And the more I started thinking about it and looking into it, I realized that surfing is the one sport where even the best people in the world wipe out every time they do it. And one of the things that leadership requires is a willingness to be vulnerable, to try new things, and to embrace failure as learning. And so I was like, so if we taught business leaders how to surf, they would have to have a humbling experience. They'd have to be able to let their guard down, show some vulnerability. And as a result of it, they'd learn a new physical skill, which people tend not to do as much of after the age of 35. They stick in their comfort zone. And there's a lot of metaphors around, the ocean, surfing, keeping, on the wave, riding the wave, keeping your eye on the horizon and what's right in front of you, not being able to control it. And so started playing with the idea, and over time it really turned into something. It needed some refinement. I worked with an instructional design friend, and we built this amazing leadership program called LeaderSurf, and it's a play back on the leadership, surf, serve. And I've brought several groups from different companies around the world to Costa Rica and Nicaragua to run the program. Unfortunately, the pandemic made me hit pause, but we're ramping back up for 2022.
Amazing. John, I knew I was going to enjoy this conversation because everything you just said is on point on what my passion is. And I suppose, do you get that feeling? And again, I really want to sort of learn about what people get from it, because I think that could be really exciting. There's a couple of programs we're working on at the minute, which is similar, hence why we're going to have a chat afterwards. But it's that perception change of environments. and seeing things differently.
Yeah.
How much impact has that had on people to go outside their, yes, you mentioned comfort zone, but just completely let the guard down, completely new experience? What's that been like for you and the participants?
So it has been life altering for many people that have been through the program. And yeah, they've come back to me a few years later and said, this was a turning point in my personal and professional life. I found myself as a result of that program. I think it starts with, there's about a 2-hour van ride from the airport to the hotel that we stay at, whether it's in Costa Rica or Nicaragua, and it's an hour of it is on a bumpy dirt road, in either case. And it's like this immersion process of leaving everything behind the dusty road and then showing up somewhere, like starting a new school where you can be anyone you want to be for the week, and you're going to try new things, and you're already kind of in the unknown. And so we talk about embracing the unknown for the week. And I think that part of it is that the act of learning to surf does things for people depending upon, it meets you where you are. For the pompous, kind of egocentric leader, it's completely humbling. And as a result, that person realizes that they can't beat the ocean and that they're not as good as they thought they were. And so they come back with a new respect for the ocean. And if you think of the ocean as the people that you work with, in the metaphor, you can't control them, but you can harness their power. So you have to learn how to change your predicament to improve others around you. And for those that come in that are potentially more tepid and a little bit insecure, I think the fact of actually catching that first wave, getting cheered on by a group of strangers that are becoming friends, you come home empowered and feeling like you can do anything as a result. And so that's what's been super cool for me, is to see how the program influences people differently. And I think that's the key difference between a leadership program and a management program. Management programs to me are about uniform results. You want each person to come out with the same set of skills. But in a leadership program, if leadership is about individuality, you want each person to come out with their own aha and their own learnings, and not the same learnings as everyone else. And I think that's what's been unique about LeaderSurf.
Amazing. I might be signing up soon. So
sure.
I really want to sort of, like, when I looked into what you were doing and how you were speaking about what you did, something came back up in my thought process about experiential learning. It was a big thing in what we delivered in the military. We used the outward bounds as our playgrounds, as I always say, to take people outside their comfort zone. And I shared with you, we're on recording this, we're on half term with the children, and I laughed with one of my ex-colleagues saying that the children are on experiential learning, which basically meant they had the shoes on and they're outside playing. But how does that link into what you've experienced in that experiential learning piece? How does that come across?
Yeah, I think, we all tend to learn differently. Some people can learn through visual, some people can learn through reading, but I think overall, we learn more just in general through experiencing things, doing things. Show me and I may know, but involve me, and it's going to really hit home. And so whether it's a team building session or whatever I'm doing with corporate groups, I always start off with an experiential component. And the icebreaker activity is really to get people engaged, and then to take what we did, so you have a shared experience, and then tie it back to, so how can we use what we just did as a metaphor or an aha moment that you can apply to the business. And I try to incorporate that into basically every session that I do, because those are the most memorable things. And so it's much harder on Zoom, but even on Zoom or on video, there are ways to do experiential pieces, where you're really getting everyone's voice in the room or in the virtual room.
Yeah, amazing. And again, do you know, just one of the things that outside of my military bubble, I realized there wasn't that connection to, like, there was the team building that was happening, but there wasn't a lot of companies doing the so what. Like, what can you take from what you've just done there back into your position, or your business or your people? So a really important element that I see quite a lot of people missing. Well, from your perspective, delivering and leading these forwards, what do you see as like the common challenges that people start opening up and sharing about?
Yeah, so there's imposter syndrome for a lot of people where they're like, do I deserve to be in this role, or, are people seeing through me? So there's some of that self-doubt, self-awareness piece. There's blind spots to all of us. But the other one that comes through a lot is, how do I get the most out of the people around me? And the problem that a lot of people have is that they try to take kind of a one size fits all approach, and everybody's unique and different. And therefore you have to tailor your leadership style to each person that you're interacting with. I have a coaching client now, a guy named Alberto, and when talking and asking him to define leadership, one of the things that he said that I thought was really astute was, he said, there is no one recipe for leadership. And the follow-up to that we then discussed on our most recent coaching was, I said, so as the chef, the person making the recipe, occasionally you have to come out of the kitchen and you have to ask the patrons for some feedback, so that, maybe you have to alter the recipe for each person to fit their needs. And so that leadership thing, is really about tailoring your style rather than trying to change everyone else. It's a lot easier to go about things and you be the flexible one.
Yeah, Joe, you've reminded me then as well about how many things I'm really passionate about learning from the people that are in front of me, and the amount of times that I'll deliver something and they put it in a different story or different words, and I'm like, I love that. Thank you so much. I'm going to use that, because it's that storytelling element, isn't it? It's the changing perspective, and everybody sees things differently. And I love it when they pick out things that are like, oh, I get that, but this is how I see it. And what a great experience for you to be on the beach, a completely different world, just sharing stories. You mentioned about how much people get from coming together. That's a phenomenal experience, isn't it, to give people that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, selfishly, I get to go to the program as a participant every time, is the way I see it. I don't see myself as the teacher. I see myself as a facilitator. And so I'm the tour guide. I put them on the bus and then, we point things out. But I come back from each program having learned as much, if not more, than anyone else. And so one of the things I try to get leaders and businesses to do is to be teachers, because if you're a teacher, you're also a learner. And you learn as much through the experience of having to get really clear and know the material well, but also then to hear from whoever your students, whoever the people are that you're working with. And I think of this idea of being on this lifelong learning journey.
Yeah, and it's quite amazing when you hear people say that. And I mention that because the people that we've spoken to on this podcast, some we would perceive as the title they have or the experience they have, they know it all, and a lot of people think that, but almost the experience is that the higher up or the more involved in leadership positions, the more open they are to learning, and the more learning they're doing. So it's almost it's almost to flip it around, that you think the most learning happens early on, but my experience speaking to people, it actually gets wider the higher up you get, because you get even more opportunities and potentially time to learn more as well.
I think it's a really good insight. One of the things I often do when I open programs and we go around and everyone does intros, and part of it is that typically you're introing to people, I don't know them, but they already know each other in many instances. I hate asking people, who are you, what do you do, or what's your job title? I ask the question, what do you get paid to do? And the rationale behind that is, what value are you creating for your company? And people struggle with it because they fall back on titles. But I did this with a group of early talent people at one point, from company Land O'Lakes. They make butter and they make feed and so forth, big co-op. And 23 out of the 25 early talent people said, I get paid to learn. And I thought that was amazing. And so I share that with executives, because I think, imagine if your executive team in your company said, we get paid to learn. They would approach their jobs and what they do every day in a very different way than, I get paid to make decisions and I get paid to bring my knowledge. It's almost the opposite.
Yeah. And again, a very small change to
Mhm.
have a massive impact, which is always a benefit. So, Brian, we have 1 minute left. Our audience are wanting to level up their leadership journey. What are some of your hints and tips to level up what you're doing right now if you're in a leadership position?
Yeah, so leadership to me is the journey of self-awareness. There's no set of skills or traits that, if you are this or that you're going to be an effective leader. The best leaders are the ones that know what their strengths are and they know what their weakness is. I refer to your weakness as your kryptonite. I always use the Superman analogy of we all know about Superman's superpowers, but we also know that kryptonite is his weakness. So be clear on what your superpowers are, be clear on what your weakness is, and don't be shy about sharing that weakness with others, because more people will shield you from it than use it against you. To me, that's by far and away the biggest kind of tip that I can give people around leadership. Is it's a journey of self-discovery. And when people say that you're wise, I think wise comes from being self-aware and knowing how you're going to interact and react in different circumstances.
Amazing. What a great way to finish a podcast. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Guys, if you really enjoyed that, make sure you're following us on your podcast provider, you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. I'd really like to hear from each and every person that listens which bits and the takeaways and their added value points from each of our guests. So please make sure you follow us and share that with us, and pass this episode forward if you think it's going to help somebody else as well. So Brian, thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. This was great. I enjoyed it.
Good. I'm going to put all your links in the comments below for people to go and check you out as well.
Awesome.
I'm really excited to stay connected and continue these discussions as well. So guys, thank you so much for your time this week, and I'll see you at 6 a.m. next Wednesday for another amazing guest. Speak to you soon. Bye.